Good evening, everyone. Welcome tonight. Chris Fortunato, Thayer's head of school. A very happy Founders Day to all, and welcome to the first Global Speaker Series event of 2025 and the launch of Thayer's new Business Leadership Masterclass. So first of all, thank you to all of our students and guests here tonight on campus and the many of you who are going to be watching us on Zoom this evening. I'm grateful to the truly exceptional group of panelists and moderator, whom I'll be introducing shortly, for their generous leadership in joining us today and for helping Thayer take yet another step forward in meaningfully engaging our students. Over the last 2 years, as we've looked to both what our students are excited and curious about, and also what experiences and skills we believe they need to have in order to thrive here at Thayer and beyond, we've embarked on a journey to build programs that can complement and build on one another, including programs associated with entrepreneurship and business. That entrepreneurship program, begun about 2 years ago, now includes 2 levels of courses, serving 50 upper school students in our community, being very ably led by Kevin Cedrone. It includes an upper school financial literacy seminar, now entering its 2nd year, and most recently, an investment and stock portfolio simulation program, both led by Thayer parent and veteran investment professional Derek Hayden, who will oversee the new masterclass as well, along with Peter Brooks, our assistant head of school for academics. So tonight's Business Leadership Masterclass opens up a next chapter in this work as we pilot a 12-session seminar that will bring CEOs and industry and academic leaders together to both inspire and ground our students in business, leadership, finance fundamentals, including understanding and leveraging evolving technologies in the rapidly changing times in which we live. So I've shared this with our trustees just a little while ago. We had nearly 70 students apply to be part of this winter-spring masterclass, which takes place in the evenings after sports. It is an entirely optional thing to do. So that number is an impressive one, knowing how busy our students are to begin with. All of this only continues to reinforce our students' interests and appetites to explore these fields of study, and our commitment to exposing them to the people, ideas, and opportunities to better prepare them for what lies ahead. In that vein, I'm excited to share that we are beginning a search to hire a full-time faculty member as a 1-year pilot next year to teach a spate of business, finance, leadership courses as part of our academic program during the school day next year. And in the spirit of gratitude this Founders Day, I want to thank Guy and Sue Daniello for so generously offering us a challenge gift of $50,000. They are working hard today to match so that we can take this wonderful program tonight and over the winter and spring to new heights of excellence, right out of the gate. And speaking of getting right out of the gate, let's begin tonight's program by welcoming our distinguished panelist and moderator. There are bios out both online and in print materials as well, but I'm going to give a little bit of a synopsis for each one. We begin with Abe Ceesay, CEO at Rapport Therapeutics, who brings to our discussion tonight over 2 decades of biopharmaceutical industry experience. Mr. Ceesay serves on the board of directors of Pacira Biosciences as chairman of the board for Life Sciences Care, and is on the board of trustees at the Museum of Science in Boston, as well as Thayer Academy. Please welcome Abe Ceesay. Next, we welcome Rachelle Jacques, an experienced biotech executive and independent board director. Ms. Jacques most recently served as president and CEO of Therapeutics, a late-stage biotechnology company focused on advanced therapies for autoimmune and inflammatory diseases. She serves on the boards of directors of Unicure NV and Corbus Pharmaceuticals, and is a founding member of the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine Action for Quality Task Force. Please welcome her tonight. Next, we are joined by Vice Admiral of the U.S. Navy retired Michael Connor, who is the founder, chairman, and CEO of ThayerMahan. He is a global authority on undersea operations, and in the course of his 35-plus-year career in the military, commanded at the ship, squadron, and task force levels, and was assigned to various submarine commands. Admiral Connor, a proud Thayer alum, class of 1976, founded ThayerMahan to accelerate the United States' ability to effectively monitor ocean activity using autonomous systems. Please welcome him here tonight. Our next panelist, Guy Daniello, is an entrepreneur, founder, and CEO of the Peloton Consulting Group, a global leader in management and IT services that helps businesses gain competitive advantage through digital transformation. Peloton Consulting Group has been recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing private companies in America 8 times, including in 2024. Mr. Daniello founded and leads Breakaway Ventures, which provides capital and advice to early stage and growing businesses. And here at Thayer Academy, he serves on our board of trustees. Please welcome Mr. Daniello. Next, we are joined by Siobhan O'Mahony, the Feld Family Professor in Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Management and Organizations at the Boston University Questron School of Business. Professor Mahoney launched Innovate at BU, a campus-wide initiative to spur innovation across BU's 19 schools and colleges. She teaches a popular elective design thinking and innovation, as well as doctoral classes in organizational theory and design of field methods. Her research is published broadly in top journals, and she also serves as a member of the board of the Sconset Trust. Please welcome her here tonight. And our final panelist joining us here with our gratitude by Zoom is Jay Hooley, former chair of the board and CEO of State Street Corporation, one of the world's leading providers of financial services to institutional investors, including investment servicing, investment management, and investment research and trading. During his time with State Street Corporation, Mr. Hooley also served as president and COO, as head of State Street's investment services division, and as vice chairman and global head of the company's investment servicing and investment research and trading. Mr. Hooley's public company board service includes ExxonMobil Corporation, where he's a lead director, Aptiv, Liberty Mutual Insurance, and State Street Corporation. He also serves on nonprofit boards, including the Boys and Girls Club of Boston, the President's Council of Massachusetts General Hospital, Massachusetts Competitive Partnerships, and Boston College. Please welcome Mr. Hooley. And this impressive and intrepid panel tonight will be guided by Thayer alum Dr. Kelley Tuthill, class of 1988, who is president and CEO of Catholic Charities Boston. Before her appointment as president and CEO of Catholic Charities Boston in 2024, she's had a very distinguished and varied career. She served as Regis College's first vice president of marketing communications, and as many of you know and remember and recognize her, she was a news anchor and reporter for over 2 decades, primarily with CVBT, did I get that right? WCVB TV. Channel 5. Okay, excellent. So Channel 5, winning many awards, including 3 National Headliner Awards and several Emmys. She has served for 25 years on the Notre Dame College of Arts and Letters Advisory Council and the Gallivan Journalism Board, and was appointed to the board of directors of the Breast Cancer Research Foundation in 2024. Please welcome her tonight. So I'm going to turn this over to Kelley in a moment to lead our panel through questions and answers and discussion and stories and expressions of wisdom to inform and inspire our students. We will be sure to leave some time at the end of this for questions from our audience, and I encourage all of our students to be thinking along the way, considering questions that you may want to pose to our panelists. And with that, Kelley, I turn it over tonight for your moderation with my gratitude.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I dug out my Thayer ring to wear tonight. It's a true antique from the 1900s, so enjoy. Thank you all for being here. You know, as I looked at your bios, I was struck by so many things. And I first want to thank you, Vice Admiral, for your service to our country. And thank you. And what I noted about all of you is the service you provide to our communities. And I just think that's an important lesson to start with our young people, that your success is so clear. What you've achieved in your academic lives and in your careers is so impressive. But I hope they all note in your bios what you do with the power you've gained, the knowledge you've learned, and the gifts that you have to make our communities better places, both here at Thayer, which I know a lot of you spend a lot of time making Thayer a great place for the students, but also in so many different ways. So I just want to acknowledge that before we get started. So my first question I think is really timely because we've all just survived January. So I think we all need a pat on the back for that. The world is changing kind of fast right now. And I'm curious what in your education or in your experience during your careers has prepared you in general to take advantage of change, either how you manage it or how you benefit from it, and really what advice you give to students about navigating the change they will inevitably face in the course of their lifetime and in their careers. You don't all have to answer every question. We have a big panel, but I invite you, since you're sitting next to me, Abe, you can take the first question. Talk to me about change.
I guess I sat in the right seat.
You're in the hot seat, my friend.
You know, change is something that I think, you know, if I'm speaking to the students here, is something that, put myself in your shoes, I didn't appreciate change when I was your age. Just didn't, right? You don't have the life experience yet to really understand what your life ahead, both academically, professionally, athletically, in the arts, whatever it may be, will bring. So I think most of what I really learned was in my professional career. And I'm in the biotech industry. And in the biotech industry, one thing that is a given is change. Unfortunately, when you look at developing new therapies for patients, about less than 5% of what actually gets discovered ends up making it to a patient. So you're in this industry and in a career that is just constantly changing. And one of the things that you really have to prepare for, and if I were to say anything to students, is really think about resilience in your career. Resilience is so important. And if I think back to what I did learn, I would say athletically, being in athletics and really understanding the whole attitude around resilience really has taught me a lot. And I've carried that all the way through my career.
Excellent. I'm going to bring Jay in because it's hard to be on Zoom, as you all know. Yeah. So Jay, I'm going to get you in the conversation. You've seen a lot in your career. Talk about how you prepared for the unexpected and what advice you have for the young people.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, and welcome, everybody. You know, I think that, as Abe mentioned, I mean, change is fundamental to what we all do, both as individuals, but particularly in business. And I would say it's probably the hardest thing that we do is to change. And, you know, the foundation for change is the experiences and knowledge that you get in the classroom. For instance, knowing math, knowing history, knowing different sciences gives you that foundation. And then a big thing to me about change is a mindset. Sometimes as individuals, we can get stuck in a place. And sometimes that's a job for the adults in the room. You know, you get in a job and you kind of get stuck and you're doing the same thing over and over again. And you develop a mindset that's kind of more rigid. So to me, the foundation of education and the experiences in life are what enable you to adapt to change. A mindset gives you the ability to look beyond the immediate and see what change is necessary. And then in the case of a business setting, there's a whole bunch of things that follow that require you to adjust and adapt, including technology.
And Siobhan, I see you nodding your head, so I'm going to pull you into the conversation. I'm sure you do a lot of case study work and a lot of stuff in academia. How does that translate to what people see in the real world as well?
The word I'm going to go with, so you had resilience, which I like, and I'm going to use the word triangulation, because when change is very fast and something's changed, something's done the same, the position someone had that day might change the next day. So triangulation is like a navigational technique, my friend. I'm sure you did this underwater, right? So it's really comes from like how people navigate difficult waters. And I think that means that you can't rely on any one data point. You need a couple of data points. You need to talk to the people before the meeting, after the meeting, maybe everyone before the meeting, and maybe go back and then check. So that's, I mean, triangulation is kind of tacking and coming at things from all directions. You can't just say, oh, that's where things are right now, because that may not be right.
That's a really good point. I like that. Rachelle, what would you like to add to this conversation?
I think I'm going to try to tap my memory to go way, way back and think about the kind of foundation that is really important for navigating these kinds of changes. And I'm going to advocate for a moment for liberal arts education because I have a microphone and I can. So
do it.
I think a liberal arts, I had a liberal arts education, and I think back to you don't realize what you're learning until much later sometimes. And in liberal arts, what they try to do is they teach you cross-discipline and help you learn how to connect dots and how to maybe tackle the same problem and the same question from many different perspectives. And, you know, I think years later, I realized that was a skill not everybody has. And it's incredibly important as the world's changing, because then you kind of know how to use those skills to evaluate, you know, what might be coming, what's different, what stays the same. And then I would add, it's not just the world that's changing. You all will change. And whatever are your hopes and dreams today, 20 years from now, they might be totally different. And so you want to have a skill set that helps you learn how to do new things so that you can pursue your next, you know, passion, whatever it may be.
Mike, I assume you have dealt with a lot of unexpected moments in your career.
It's continuous. I think the way I look at change is there's two ways to look at it. Fear of change what's going to happen to me because the system changed. It's also opportunity. 4 years ago, we were creating a business that revolved largely around the U.S. offshore wind industry, which recently basically moved out. And so we're reinventing ourselves, not because we're great visionaries, but because we have to. And so you do what you have to do. And there's other places to go, leveraging what we've learned in that industry. And so it's changes is constant. And I also say to those of you who are worried about change and don't know exactly what you're going to do, one of the things I learned from high school is I had no idea what I was going to do. And there was some fear of, shouldn't I know by now? Even if you think you know, you don't. Don't worry about it.
And Guy will go last, and I think your perspective is a really good one. You can't be an entrepreneur if you're afraid of change and uncertainty, right?
That is true. That is very true. I mean, when I think about change, and I think Jay said it really well, it's a mindset. And I think it's a mindset of both an individual and an organization if you're leading it. A lot of my organization is around helping companies embrace and leverage technology to go faster and be more efficient in the marketplace. So you really have to have this mindset that change is constant, and you have to be curious and even create organizations that I think are curious and eager to learn. If you look at, just the last set of years, we had a technology revolution around big data, around companies moving applications to the cloud, robotic process automation. And now we're in this AI mindset, right? And you look at it, and when people talk about change, they talk about like it's this rapid thing, but it's actually more paced, and it hits this maturity curve, right? Like the big buzz around how DeepSeek had, up, but really you're hitting a new maturity curve of where companies were that specific technology became faster, more efficient, and was able to do it with less processing power. So it's going to evolve change in organization. Organizations will constantly change, but the ones who embrace it, accept it, and continue to steadily evolve win out over time, in my opinion.
Well, you brought up AI, so I'll go with that next, Guy, and you can keep the floor if you want. Out in this audience, young people getting a lot of mixed messages about how they should use it, how they should think about it in terms of their future. So what do you think they ought to know, and what do you think the future holds if you had to predict now in terms of AI in their careers?
Yeah, you'll probably laugh at this analogy, but many of us sitting on the panel today, when we were in college, didn't even have email. I remember that I had the benefit of a word processor that had 3 lines on the word processor, and people would come from like my dorm and borrow it so that they could write papers, and that was innovation when we were in school.
Right.
So I personally think that we're going to learn a lot from many of you, because the speed at which you embrace and use it and find new ways to evolve will help many of us learn. So I think it's very important for schools. We actually talked about it a little bit on the board meeting today. Should help students learn to embrace it, because it's going to be part of how you do work on a day-to-day basis going forward.
Siobhan, something to add to that in terms of how they use with caution and embrace it, but not get burned by it.
Yeah, it's certainly making my life harder as a professor, but we know who wrote that paper, so we're being being pressed and challenged to get in front of AI in terms of like what students hand in and how they're accounting for it. So we tell our students, you are responsible for what you submit, and if it doesn't make sense, I mean, we used to have turn it in, so we just put that paper in, and there's 5 others with the same sentence, but now, we are dealing with something very different, and there's a generality or an abstraction to it. So what can you, if you're going to use AI, and I hear you and I'm all for it, what can you add? How can you differentiate yourself on top? So we need to ask students to like show us how you used it, where you used it, and then show us you. Because AI cannot have an opinion or point of view or make a logical theoretical argument in quite the same way a human can at this point. So we want to see that, and we are asking our students to give us that.
I think you're bringing it up in such a great way because you got to use it in an ethical way and still be the generator of the idea, but it's augmenting and helping you go to a different level. At least how we see it being utilized.
And if you all get good at it at the same time, you're going to have to work harder to differentiate yourself on top of that.
And Jay, in your crystal ball, the future in terms of the business world and AI?
Yeah, Kelly, I think the AI hype, it's funny, it's, I think it's good and bad. So one, it's way overstated. This Chat GPT, which I think caused everybody to pay attention to it. That's the good part, is that we're paying attention. But as Guy mentioned, there's a whole range of machine learning, data analytics, AI included, that are transforming every business on the planet. And, if you're eventually gonna matriculate to college and then into business, and I don't care what you choose for a career, technology is going to be a foundational part of what it is. And the earlier conversation is going to be critical to where you go. So, if I were sitting in your seats, I would do my darndest to soak up every bit of technology insights that you can get. You don't have to be a programmer, but know how it works, know how it influences things, because it's gonna be with you for your whole careers. So the AI hype thing, I do think it's positive because it's caused everybody to pay attention to it, but it's so much broader than Chat GPT, and it is influencing every business there is. I'd also say, and Guy would have a point of view on this, is that it leads to the change thing, is that every business is in some degree of change. And I found in my career that the easiest way to induce change is in a crisis where everybody knows you've got to change. So as a leader, you pick the new direction, everybody kind of understands. Trying to initiate change, particularly in large organizations, very difficult, particularly around technology. So as you think about careers and as you think about different industries and different types of companies, think about the size of company, think about as you investigate different organizations, look at their past, look at their history. Have they been able to sustain change through decades and timeframes? But it's, other than the basics of education, it's the most important thing you can do in your high school and college education, is really get a foundation in the potential of technology, not AI, broadly technology.
Hey, Rachelle, Mike, other thoughts on AI? Anybody want to?
I wanted to see in the room who's using Chat GPT. Okay, for the rest of you, you should. You should, because it's a big topic and it's coming and it's going to change the world. We have no idea what that looks like yet, but every day for you can learn how to use it. And I think there's going to be an art in understanding the right questions to ask, and you should play with it and ask it things you know the answers to, and then try to consider, why didn't that give me the answer I was expecting? But use it and leverage it, and don't do anything that's going to upset the professor or the teacher or get you kicked out of school. None of those things. But I would highly recommend you start just using it yourself, just to see how it works and just hone your skills.
Yeah, I think one of the conversations we're having at my company, and I think it's broadly happening in the biotech industry, is, there's technology and then there's application. AI is the technology, but what we still haven't fully understood is how to actually apply it to make things either more efficient, or get to better outcomes. And I think what I have experienced and what I've learned, at least in the biotech industry, in the life sciences industry, is that application with AI only goes so far right now. And if I were to give advice to students, is do not let technology overtake your ability to still think. You still have to be able to think. A chemist can use AI to synthesize a bunch of compounds, but the chemist is the only one that can go up to a whiteboard and draw a new structure. AI can't do that for you. You still have to have an application, a human application to solving problems. And I think one of the biggest risks we have with AI in education is that more and more students may rely on that and become, for lack of a better term, lazy, and don't allow technology to make you lazy. You still have to think, you still have to have human application to everything you're going to do in life. And it may make you help solve problems more efficiently, but you're still going to have that human element.
Mike, you have anything you want to
We
add?
have battles over AI every day. And one of the biggest things we do is acoustic processing for underwater sound. And so there's a camp that is educated in AI that says, well, the science doesn't matter. It's just we run the data through a model. The model spits out the answer. If it gets the right answer the right percentage of the time, it's good. And then we have the purists, the physicists and engineers who say, well, you have to actually understand how the sound interacts in the water and how it moves. And we really were getting to the point where they were almost at, fisticuffs over this. And what we ended up doing was having the AI practitioners work for those who understand the physics of sound. And we're getting much better results because they start with, this is how it works. If you know the theory behind it, you can make your model work much better.
Excellent. I'm going to move to a topic that I think you might get 6 different answers on, which I hope is helpful because then you can, with AI, use your own brain to decipher what's right for you. But let's talk about B School, because these are obviously young people who are interested in business or they wouldn't be here tonight. So we always hear about, some paths where absolutely you need an MBA, other places where it's not. Now we're getting statistics among the top 15 business schools. Students in 2024 who sought and accepted a job offer within 3 months of graduating. This is a standard measure for looking at career outcomes. It fell by 6 percentage points to 84% compared to the average over the past 5 years previously. So how do you react? I mean, when students are kind of looking at their path, I know it's high school, and so business school may seem far away, but, looking ahead, is that essential for career success going forward for young people interested in being entrepreneurs or being in the business world? Do you want to start, Abe, next to me?
So I went to business school, so I'm going to say it worked for me. But, with all of that said, I look back at the reason I got my MBA and I went to business school, and that is because I had a very clear intention. I was a science undergrad, wanted to understand how I could apply my science undergrad to the business world, but I really didn't have a strong foundation in business academically, so I felt I needed that. So there was an intention. I think what we're seeing right now with kind of the matriculation of MBA students, there's a few different dynamics. One is I think there are a lot of people that are seeking their MBA as something just to put on their CV versus having a clear intent for why you are doing it. So that would be my first advice, is say, have intent in anything you do, whether it's business school, whether it's choosing your classes currently in high school, whether it's what you're going to do in college, have an intention. That doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life, but you at least have a thought of why you're doing it. I think the second element that's happening right now, especially with the top business schools, is unfortunately, academically, we have moved too far, in my opinion, on the IQ spectrum and moved away from the EQ spectrum. And I think what we are seeing, and I know I see it all of the time, is when we're interviewing people at my company, I really don't care where you went to school.
These parents that they work so hard to get these kids.
I'm sorry. I truly don't care. Now, listen, I'm saying that I'm being a little bit hyperbolic in my answer, but the point is, if you show up with your degree and you show up with your degree leading first, and that's what you talk about, and you have no EQ, you're not going to be a good add to my company. You're just not. You have to have the emotional quotient along with the intellectual quotient. And I think we've moved way too far in education on the EQ, on the IQ side of things. And I think what we're seeing, and you're seeing it a lot in some of the top business schools, is if they're walking out with the ego of the degree, but you don't have the emotional quotient to go with it, to be an added partner to an organization, that's going to really hurt you in your job hunt.
And in my line of sight is a sign that says, who needs a phone when you can color? So put down your phones, color preferably with someone else, and have a conversation at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Develop some EQ. Okay, similar thoughts, different thoughts? Many thoughts?
Different thoughts, yeah, to Abe's point about IQ versus EQ. I've been teaching MBAs for 25 years. And usually I also teach executives, and I started at Harvard Business School, but usually the MBAs come in and they want all the quant classes and they want to take tech strategy and the snazzy stuff and finance and, private equity. And then they come back 10 years later, looking for their exec ed, so they can become that general manager, move into a director, C-level position. They're like, oh my God, the soft stuff is so important. And I'm like, well, we could have given you more of that earlier if you had the appetite for it. So it's a very robust awakening that I think executives come in and they're like, powered influence, negotiations, like these are the classes.
Yeah, explain, because you say soft stuff. Make sure everybody here knows what you mean.
The soft skills, organizational behavior, leadership, culture, these things that the young MBAs kind of think is not important. Our executives come back and they want, I need double that. So that's
because it's back to what Jay said a few minutes ago. Managing change in a big organization or a small organization for that matter is hard. And if you don't have the soft skills, it's nearly impossible.
Hey, Kelly, I'll weigh in if
Sure.
I don't know who's speaking there, but I think it depends a little bit off of Abe's point. I didn't get an MBA. I was a B student in college. I went to a few grad school courses, couldn't stand it. It wasn't my thing, not how I learned. I'm more an experiential learner. So the first point is we all learn different ways. And I think, over time you figure out what works for you. Are you better off with experiences or are you better off with classroom education? And so that's one point. I'd say, the other point is if you have an engineering or science undergrad and you don't have those basic, accounting, finance, strategy, statistics skills, that's a little bit of an issue. So that's a reason to go after an MBA. The other reason though is a couple of my kids one has an MBA, the other is.
Oh, no. Right.
And 4 years in the work world, so they've got some experience, they've got some footing on how business works. And then an MBA can be, I think, very helpful in addition to those disciplines that I mentioned. The case studies, which most of these MBA programs, I'm not sure whether Siobhan has case studies, but when you're sitting in a room with similar-minded people with different backgrounds debating cases and examining what works, what doesn't work, and having a kind of a live petri dish to examine different business settings, not just one, but multiple business settings, I think is invaluable. That's the experiential thing that, in my career, not having an MBA, I was able to accomplish, gaining those skills as I progressed my career with different disciplines, from sales to operations to IT. So I think it is very individual as far as, where you're trying to get to, how you learn, and then at what stage in your career might you feel like it would be helpful to you to accelerate your career.
Rachelle, you made a ploy for the liberal arts a little bit ago.
Yeah.
You want to make another one? Can you do that? Can you be a liberal arts undergrad and then decide you do want to go get your MBA? Could you get into B school that way?
Oh, definitely, definitely, yeah. I mean, myself, I was a strange animal in that I got a business degree in a liberal arts college, but you know, you also take the philosophy class, so that's all okay. But yeah, you absolutely can do that, and anybody can go get their MBA. You know, I think it's like Abe. You know, you have a science grad degree, and then you want to go learn about business, and that helps you be more successful in an organization. And I think, you know, for me, the other thing I think about, if I put myself on the side of hiring people and looking for talent and trying to assess where they can, you know, have the most impact, you know, I always look at, do they know about the job? Do they understand the content and they learn all of those things, for example, in an MBA, but can they do the work? Can they drive the work? Can they influence other people to help them get the work done? So if you know about the thing, but you can't do the thing, you need to work on learning how to do the thing, because that's at the end of the day what we need to have done inside organizations. So I just think, you know, for me, how do you solve that problem? I always look for people who have some work experience before they went to business school, because it's kind of the only way to get the right context to help, you know, help accelerate your learning and then actually apply it later.
Helps with that intent piece and making sure you understand the costs that you're undertaking,
Yeah,
either for yourself or on
definitely.
behalf of your
Definitely.
poor parents.
Yep.
Guy, did you have something you want to say about education?
Sure, a topic I'm a little bit passionate about. I thought, just in regards to this idea of who you're hiring and why, I always refer to it, it's not where you went to school, it's what you come with from the standpoint of experience, your communication skills or your technical skills, right? Your ability to connect during that interview process with really what you've done and what you're gonna do. Those who come with more drive, can-do attitude tend to be more successful, at least in our organization. And just in regards to the whole B school part, I guess I sit in between Abe and Jay here in that I was going to Babson, working on my MBA in the evening, and then made a decision to switch out of kind of the pharmaceutical industry into consulting, the industry I'm in now. Took a pay cut, started kind of a step down below where I was, and kind of as I was working on my MBA, really found this passion. I always knew I wanted to start a business, but then things took off so much in my professional career with professional services, consulting, technology. It was busy. I actually didn't finish, but the case study format for me was fantastic. The inspiration around kind of what it would be like to lead and build a business and start a company was exceedingly inspiring and kind of nudged me to finally step forward and make a run at building a business, which I'm forever grateful for. So, I guess the answer there is it depends on you. What's the best for you and what helps you succeed in life?
Excellent. Mike, do you want to bring us home on this
Yeah,
topic?
I do. I'm having a real case of imposter syndrome here with these people. I started my business at the challenge of a guy who was a Harvard Business School professor, but he didn't teach me anything because I didn't go to his classes. But so I went to raise some money for a company that it is now ThayerMahan. And one of the early questions I got was, well, what do you think EBITDA will be in year 2? And I said, well, that depends. And he said, what does it depend on? I said, it depends on what EBITDA means. Because I had no idea. And, but, if you have passion about doing something and you surround yourself with people who know what you don't know, then you can get there. What I've learned since about MBAs is the EQ part is important. The ability to take whatever it is you do and create a realistic financial model for what you do, so you can explain what you do to investors who don't understand how your process turns into money. That's very important. And it probably doesn't matter, as long as you know it, it doesn't really matter where you learn it.
Mine was Gantt chart. I didn't know what one was. But we've all got Google now, so you don't have to show that you're stupid. Just nod your head and then look it up and know the next time. So it happens to all of us and leads us perfectly, as they say, a good segue into our next question. Rachelle, I'll give it to you first. You know, everybody looking at you will think, you know, you got it made. You've done everything perfectly your whole career. I'm guessing you haven't. So now's the true confession time. Tell us a moment when your leadership was really, you know, tested in a difficult way, what you gained from it, and maybe something that you can share with everyone so they maybe won't make the same mistakes that we all have.
Oh my gosh, the list is so long, and I'm lucky to have drawn this straw. I'm not sure how, but I will say first, and absolutely I can share an example or 10, but you know, the important thing to know right now is that whoever you see up here and lots of other people you meet that you think are successful, don't believe for a minute that they didn't have lots of failures along the way. And in fact, it's the failures that you tend to learn more from, and those help you be better and better as you progress, as long as you take the moment to learn. I would say, you know, for me, I made a lot of non-traditional moves in my career. I was in finance for about 10 years. Then I wanted to go to marketing. I had no idea what I was doing. It was so embarrassing. I was used to being really good at what I was doing, and then I was less than mediocre. And I made all kinds of mistakes along the way. And I have, you know, lots of stories about those transitions and trying new things and making mistakes, but then, you know, kind of figuring out how to learn and get on with it. But I think from a leadership standpoint of, you know, thinking about when my leadership was really tested is a very different thing. And that would have come in, for those familiar here, looks like a lot of familiar folks with the biotech industry. So we do, you know, we develop medicines for people. We try to develop medicines for people, and sometimes it can take decades. And I was CEO of a company where we were working on a medicine for kids who would all die without it. And we were ready for, it was the day of the FDA approval, and we were so excited because that means that then we could provide that to patients. And instead of an approval, we got a no. And we knew these kids tend to die by age 2. And we knew it was a couple year setback. So I have to say, you know, to this day, I get choked up about it. And in that moment, I'm in my office, and I had to take about 30 minutes to get my head on straight and to figure out how to put all my problems and emotions and all of those things aside, and to walk out to the whole company and explain to them where we are, why I need them to stay. Most people will leave in a case like this. It's a huge setback for the company, and it's not at all what they were expecting. Lots of jobs out there at the time for biotech people. And I had to come out there and tell them the bad news, work through, you know, whatever they're going through, and then lead them and honestly ask them to do impossible things as fast as they could. And it was a moment, I have to say, you know, in hindsight, you say, okay, I trained my whole life for that. And it took every bit of it. But in the end, you know, the team stayed intact. We got the job done in 22 months. Those kids were treated, and you know, now there's something out there for every one of these kids. So it was, you know, it's kind of one of those moments where you don't have time to worry about anything else except how to lead forward. You'll all have your test. And, you know, a lot of times it's in a moment of crisis, and you just have to pull it together and know that you're the leader and you've got to be there for people.
If I could just probe, what do you think the one thing is that you did that kept them with you?
I was very transparent. I was very open with them. I let, you know, people express how they felt. But I asked them, you know, I asked them to stay and to do this and to keep those kids in mind, and they did it. Yeah.
I picked the right person to ask this question to. And I didn't know all of that, so thank you for sharing a little bit of a. And now I feel sorry for next, because it's a hard to call. You know, saving small children's lives is pretty profound. So thank you for sharing that. Guy, do you want to go next?
That's a tough act to follow. You know, I think one of the things that's great about failure is to what you shared about how much you can learn from it. And I think great companies embrace failure and are willing to look at it and learn from it and talk about it openly and say, we are not doing X well, but what can we learn and how can we improve? And I think it's a personal thing as well as a company thing that you need to think about as you're, leading, doing whatever, but don't be afraid to look at failure because you're going to learn so much from the mistakes you made. I always say to my team, the good news is I've made every mistake possible. So I have more experience in some aspects than other areas.
And we've got our kids to remind us of all our failures in case we forget about them. Jay, in your career, what are some of the toughest challenges you faced and what pearls of wisdom do you have to share from them?
How much time do we have? So I would say on the mistake side, I'll go light on the mistake side. Most of my worst mistakes were people mistakes. Misreading people, putting people into the wrong spot, or even worse, and organizations do this all the time. Recruiting from the outside, you won't hire somebody internally that you've been with for 15 years. But you interview somebody for 5 hours and you hire them from the outside. 50% fail rate. So most of my mistakes were in that category. The leadership challenge, there were many, including the financial crisis where I stepped into this role and we had kind of a mess on our hands. But the one that resonates most with me, pretty early in my CEO tenure at State Street, where I'll never forget this, the day before Thanksgiving, my chief operating officer comes to me. I'm about to leave for Copenhagen to one of my Thayer kids was a semester abroad, said, we think we have a billing problem with our clients. So I said, what's the scope of it? He said, well, we don't know, but it could go back a long way and could affect a lot of clients. So I said, Mike, spend the weekend, get through it, get to the details and keep me posted. So when he finally got back to me a week later, he told me that we had been overbilling our customers for 20 years. And the estimated impact was $300 million, as best as we could tell. And so, a crisis, obviously. Had to kind of quickly think through, one, getting enough information so that I could inform the board, inform the regulators, inform the authorities, including the Justice Department and all those different organizations that take an interest in something like this. And then I quickly had to figure out, once we got our arms around what it was, how I communicated to our clients that we've been overbilling them for 20 years. How I confronted with our employees, how could this have happened? One of the main activities that we conducted as a business was accounting. So how could you overbill your customers by $300 million over a 20-year period? So once it all sorted out, and a lot of the things that were mentioned earlier resonate here. One, getting your arms around the facts, being transparent with the street in our case, with the board, with employees, and then separating out how you deal with a crisis and how you continue to run your business. And so a lot of lessons learned there, not the least of which is don't overbill your customers, but just how you deal with a crisis, the transparency comment that came up, but it has to be at the right time. If you don't have enough information, then you really can't be disclosive. So it's a real test of, I would say, judgment around all of the facts and all of the constituencies that you have to deal with. So that was my little opener for
There's some doozies tonight. Mike, you got a doozy as well? What do you got for us?
I would say in a lot of organizations, the reward for doing something very, very well is to be reassigned to something that's not working. And sometimes when you're running something that works well, you don't even appreciate all the stuff it took to make that happen. So then you go into the thing that's not working and everything you look at seems to be wrong. And I went into one of those situations and I was just working hard. And I remember calling my wife and telling her that I'm pretty sure I'll be fired in 6 months. Because every time I talk to somebody, I'm telling them what's wrong. And after a while, we just decided we had to go find something that was right somewhere and tell someone that you were doing something right. And harp on that for a while to just generate some pride in what people were doing. It was very difficult. But when you sense that your people are down and you're getting more down as you try to fix things, you really have to find some bright spot somewhere and harp on that.
That's a good point. Siobhan?
I think my story is kind of a small one, but I'll share it. It's not overbilling or saving lives. But it's about, I think, crossing boundaries maybe. BU has 19 schools and colleges, and we had a vision of like, how do we get someone who's studying chemistry and someone who's studying liberal arts and someone who's doing music and let them all take innovation and entrepreneurship classes. That was my vision, and the president of the university signed up for my vision, and I wrote a report, and we raised $20 million, and we built the student center. And then he said, Siobhan, go build a minor in innovation entrepreneurship that any student could take from any place. So when I said BU has 19 schools and colleges, that's 19 different doors to bang on and knock through the, hey, do you have any innovation entrepreneurship? So I basically like, at first I visualized like I'm punching a hole into all these schools to say, oh gosh, people could take that. And there was so much resistance of like, this is a terrible idea. Like these people don't know how to draw. They can't come in my class. Like they have no prerequisites. And we can't have history majors and engineering. You know, it was like very, very difficult for people. And, at one point it was like, you should put down your dream. They could get a certificate. Siobhan, put down your dream. They just need a certificate. And I had that much resistance. So I had the support of the president, and provost was kind of on the fence. And what I did was just listen to everybody's concerns and everybody's resistance. I wrote them all down, who I met with this like big pocket of worry, like Mike's case. And then I just kind of tried to knock them off and like get through, this wasn't a fail. This is a test of leadership. Yeah. Like, could I get everybody on board? What would it like writing a bill for Congress? What would it take to bring engineering in and arts in and law in and all these other schools? So we got there, and the minor, I'm happy to say, is the second most popular minor at the university. Nice. And we have graduated hundreds of students, and it's been growing every year. And we still have to figure out the coordination to make it work. It's still not easy, but I do feel like that battle was one worth fighting. And I think now, though, when I look back on it, I try not to think like punching through boundaries. Like my reflection on it is like, if I was going to do it again, say like, how do I melt these boundaries? How do I melt these walls to let the knowledge flow so that students can, get a taste of everything? Because the world's going to force you to specialize, and it really helps for that translational knowledge for students and someone in music to take a minor in innovation entrepreneurship and go be like a product manager at Spotify. That was kind of what we were going for. We had a very clear idea, and we just had to stay with it and convert every no into a yes.
But it's hard. It's hard to be persistent when the easiest thing is to say, forget it. We really don't need this. But good for you to show the persistence piece. Abe?
So I think the common theme is failure is something that is a given. We've all learned from it. And it's interesting with failure. One of the things that I talked a little bit about athletics and what I think it taught me, throughout, my high school playing, college playing. And I used to remember I had a football coach who was really intense in high school, probably wouldn't coach now because he wouldn't be allowed to. He was intense. But, every Sunday he would come in and he would say, you've got to watch film. And I would say to myself, why am I watching film? Well, if you watch film, what you see is your mistakes. And I remember very early in my career thinking to myself, like, I made a huge, massive mistake. One of my first jobs I was in, coming out of business school, probably thought I knew a little bit more than I actually did. And I remember saying to myself, like, what are you going to do with this mistake? One thing you can do is hide from it. And the other thing you can do is actually look at the tape, actually step back and think and look at the entire thing and really figure out what went wrong. What role did you have in it and how can you learn from it? And that's something like I've just kept throughout my career is every time I make a mistake, look at the tape, learn from it. And what that takes from me, what that's taught me behaviorally is I think as a leader, you have to, one, be humble, and two, you have to be vulnerable. If you aren't those two things, then you actually can't learn. It's an impediment to learning. So I would really impart that on people to say, when you make a mistake, one, it's going to happen in your life, but two, do you have the humility and the vulnerability to actually look at that mistake and learn from it? In terms of testing leadership, biotech industry, high risk, it just never, human biology never goes the way you think it's going to go. I had started a company and we had taken our drug into what are called phase 1 trials. That's the first time you take a new medicine into humans. So that's kind of past your preclinical testing. Now you're in the first stage of your clinical testing. And this was a drug for a rare pituitary neuroendocrine tumor. And a serious tumor, if you don't take care of this tumor, you can have a stroke, you can go blind. There's a whole bunch of bad things that unfortunately happen to patients, and there was no treatment for it. And the only treatment that patients currently have is a extremely invasive neurosurgery. So we knew that there was always kind of this benefit risk, right? Like our drug wasn't perfect. Not many drugs are perfect. They have some level of toxicity. And when we took our drug into phase 1 trials, unfortunately, somebody died in our trial. And it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. And similar, we weren't able to move the company forward. We had to shut the entire company down. And I still remember, and it's emotional for me too, I still remember bringing everybody out and saying to them, like, you don't have a job. Wow. And saying that to people when they have dedicated their entire lives to help patients is a really, really hard thing to do. And what I took from that, and I'll always take from that, is what's most important as a leader is how you treat people. It ultimately is. It doesn't matter what the financial returns are. You're going to be judged on those things. It doesn't matter how much progress you make. What people will remember you as a leader and as a human is how you have treated other people in moments of crisis and in moments of really hard times. And that's really stuck with me.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry for the challenges everyone's faced, and I appreciate your candor and sharing them with the students. I know you have a lot of questions. I'm going to get to them in a minute. I have one other thing I would like to cover with the panel before we get to your questions, which is that, you know, so many of these students are going to ultimately work for companies with employees that might be all over the globe. Their boss may not even be in the same place. They may have to work remotely, some all of the time. So what advice would you give them to making sure they find mentors, that people know who they are and what they do, that they find, you know, a culture within this world that is so changing in terms of what they may have in a workplace experience? You just said we called everyone in. Many of us work in places where that's not possible because we're all everywhere. There's no town halls in a real setting. It's all virtual. So how do they build culture, good habits, good work ethic, and be seen so that they can advance? Who would like, Mike, would you like to go first on that question?
My life used to be very easy, but everyone I worked with was on the same submarine. And we 150 feet for months. So now we're sort of at the other extreme. And I'm struggling with this remote work thing. I like to see the people I work with. I like to walk through the work area to not just like ask people what's going on, but to sense what's going on and who is and is not working well with who, and how do people treat each other. And that's gotten much more difficult in this remote age. We learned a lot in COVID. We learned how to be remote in ways we didn't think we could. And now that it's over, we're trying pretty hard to pull people back as much as practical. We talked about AI and data scientists. They're unique individuals. If you need them bad enough, it's okay for them to work from their ski in, ski out condo in Vail. But for the rest of the mere mortals who have to actually build the thing that has the AI in it, they have to go to the same place and work on it. Or in some cases, they go to sea and work. So we're struggling with that. If I know some folks from this area, nephews and things that are new hires at banks in Boston, and they're allocated like 2 days a week that they can use the office. I can't even fathom what that is like, because you really have to make an effort to make sure that the people that you work for know that you work for them, know you, because it's going to be hard to have confidence in someone who you only see on the small screen. So that's not a very good answer, but it is a challenge.
Yeah. Jay, I'll pull you into that. How does a young person stand out, become a part team? Many of us came of age where on a Thursday night, then you would go out afterward and you build camaraderie among people. It's hard to do when you're all sitting at home somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fundamentals are basic and obvious, but it's worth stating them is that, whatever you do, whether it's at Thayer or whatever college you go, you have to excel and put effort in. I mean, mentors, in my career, mentors found me, I didn't find mentors. People saw me as somebody who had potential in any setting, could be a sports setting, it could be, and so, they wanted to help me out. And so, I do think that you don't go out and find mentors find you, and they find you because they see something special in you. So, work ethic, big in my mind, excelling, putting the time in, doing the extra reps makes a difference. I want to tail on to Mike's comment about work from home, which I'm in his camp, which is I just don't think it's good. I don't think it's good, particularly for people of your age. I do think, I'll tell you a little story about in the State Street days. This is a 10, 15-year-old story, just so that, I'm not completely unbalanced about this. As we were trying to recruit females into the workplace, we did an exhaustive analysis and concluded that, young married couples, get into their late 20s, early 30s, they have a kid or two, and somebody's got to deal with the kid. And it typically back then, maybe still today, was the female. And so we said, we need to develop a structured, flexible work environment. So we went through, we had 30 different job categories. We had 7 different flexible models, and we matched them up. So if you're in the organization, State Street's organization, we had 60,000 people across 25 countries. If you were in a situation where, maybe you had to deal with an elderly parent or a child, you could navigate your career to a place where you had a certain flex model that worked for you. So, I hope and think, and I know some companies are leaning in that direction, that that's where we'll end up over time. But you learn so much by being in the office, by interacting. Even Kelley's point about, Thursday night, you go out and have drinks with the staff. It's so valuable to understand people beyond just work, and sitting on a Zoom screen, you just don't get that. So you really shortchange yourself if you choose to, in my opinion, work remote. If you have the choice, you want to be in the office, because that's where you'll learn the most. That's where you'll optimize your career opportunities. And that's where you'll be noticed. Back to mentorship, if I'm looking for young people to mentor, and I mentor a lot of young kids today, I need to know them. I need to know that they have the right stuff and that I think they have upside potential and that I can bring something to that equation. If you're in a work environment and you're working remote, that's just not gonna happen as easily. So, anyway, do a good job. The last thing I would say is, and this gets to another one of my, I used to have an expression, a red X person, which is a person in our organization who knocked the lights out, you know, whether it was in sales or in trading. You know, they were the top performer every year, but they climbed over everybody else to get there. So, you know, not only do you have to excel, but you got to be a good partner. You know, somebody who not just helps themselves, but helps everybody else get ahead. And as you enter into an organization and you work in work groups, people notice that. So you don't want to be that lone ranger that's out there and everybody says, yeah, he or she is an excellent producer, but they're not a very good person. So you're gonna have both those things.
Thanks, Jay. Siobhan, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I think, well, I'd like to build on that point, but like culture can only be transmitted if it's observed and experienced. I think that's what Jay's saying. So like these moments of crisis that we've heard about tonight, like, boy, they're really salient and memorable, and those stories get told. So culture has to be observed and it has to be shared to be transmitted. So that is hard by Zoom and by email, but it's those moments of interactions where you set the tone, where you are weaving the fabric through every day. It's not the card mission statement at the desk. It's these engagement interactions where you have a choice between doing something that's good for yourself or doing something that's good for the organization. And I think when you're a leader, you build integrity by demonstrating that you've got the whole organization, the whole system at heart, that you're not being parochial and just how will this affect me or my group, my team. So, you know, that is when you bring the we, you bring the us, and you knit it together, and you advance that, and you advocate it. You have to demonstrate it. And I think to this point about being online, like whether it's, you can do that digitally, possibly, but it has to be observed and experienced, and then it has to be shared.
Guy, thoughts?
Sure. I mean, in a world where we're connecting via text and via Zoom, the power of personal connection, in my opinion, is so much more important. You know, just to give you context, I don't run an organization quite that size as Jay's, but we're going to have a 900-person organization where we have people across North America, people in Latin America, and people in India. Prior to coming to this meeting earlier today, I was on a call with someone from Sao Paulo and someone from Hyderabad earlier in the day. But I also take the time when I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, at the end of last year, spending time with some of the team. I always try to spend time and actually have a real conversation. It's a place where people are excited to meet you. I have people who come in 6 hours on a bus, 5 hours. They spend the night to be able to meet some of us who run the company, and to be able to spend a few minutes and take the time, shake their hand, say hello, get to know their name. It's so vitally important, because the reason they come together and we have this kind of celebration where we come together as a team, and you know, we have some food and some fun, and it's fantastic. And I teared up during that when I talked to the audience or the group of employees, because they were so passionate and thankful that we had gotten them together. But when you put it to yourself and each of you, you're going to have a choice at some point, graduating from college and picking a job. I would suggest you take one that you get to develop a cohort of folks. This Thursday in my Boston office, we're going to be playing salad bowl with a lot of, and most of that is driven by the younger professionals. And I make sure to get my butt in there and to play salad bowl with those guys because it gives me a chance to get to know them and they get to know me beyond being the boss, where we pick, silly names and kind of go around and it's a ball. But those people, they'll know each other for years, for the next 15, 20 years, which is for me, big chunk of the leadership team are people I've known for years. And they have come and I've been blessed for them to join me running the business. But many of them I knew when I was younger professionally, and we were at the time, you didn't realize the value of those relationships and what they would do. I mean, I think of how lucky so many of you are to be up there. Like what your classmates will be doing later in life is going to be amazing. So take the time, connect.
Yeah.
And
you have so many ways to do it now, right? And so many of my friends are still my friends, all these years later, and part of your professional network, it matters. So Rachelle and Abe, any last thoughts in terms of how they best stay connected, build a network in a world that's increasingly online? Abe.
Yeah, we have this philosophy at our company. We call it your hierarchy of priorities or your hierarchy of needs, and how you walk into a room. And do you walk in a room with the priority being company, team, self, meaning you are the last, you as an individual are the last priority. Your hierarchy should always be the company first, then the team, and then you last. And I think what we've recognized is or what I've recognized is that hierarchy is really hard to instill if you don't have human interaction. Because when you don't have human interaction and you are doing your task, you are doing your task. Mm-hmm. You're not doing the task of the organization or the task of the team. So it's hard because we live in an environment and, we live in communities that make it really challenging to get in and out of the office. But I think similar to the advice that it's been given thus far, I would say that push yourself early in your career and push yourself early in your experiences to have that human interaction. Because if your philosophy going into your career is really self-centered, you're not going to succeed. You truly aren't going to succeed. We do nothing on our own. No matter what you hear, Jeff Bezos didn't do it on his own. He didn't, and he will tell you that if you listen to him talk, no one has done it on their own. So you just have to push yourself to have that human interaction.
It's a great point. Rachelle, bring us home on this before we get to the student
really, the only thing I'd add is some of this stuff isn't rocket science. And if you can't get together, spend 5 minutes to chit chat at the end of a meeting that has a formal agenda. Call somebody and say, hey, what are you up to? Make sure you've got a one-on-one time with your boss and make sure there's a little bit of extra time to talk about nothing. Because you can also form relationships on the phone or on a Zoom, but you just need to be purposeful about it. And this is a generation, you guys can whip up a video call with 20 people for 3 hours out of thin air. And I just don't know how it happens. There's no faces on there. I don't understand it at all. You guys know how to connect. Just use those skills and figure out how to connect inside your organizations. You'll probably be the best at it. We're all up here struggling like, I can't walk around. I do the same thing. I can't walk around and see the people and read the body language, but you guys will find different ways, but just be purposeful.
Can I make a comment? Since we're here talking about business leadership, Abe brought something to my mind, and one of the hopefully they talk about, one of the generic things you talk about in business leadership is types of leaders. Hey, are you dictator type of leader where you're directing orders, or are you more of a servitude type leader? Right? I've always, and I instill this in my leadership team, is that good leaders enable, they serve, they help bring out the best in those around them and their teams, right? So understanding that different types of style of leaders and what type of leader each of you wants to be, to me is one of the things that's potentially exciting about a course on business leadership.
It's very exciting. I've learned a lot so far, but I assume that you all have questions that may be different than the ones that we worked on tonight. So please don't be shy. and ask away. Go ahead.
So as leaders, I know you guys often deal with a wide range of backgrounds, perspectives, and stories. So how do you guys deal with when someone doesn't always agree with you or has like different values and perspectives?
Okay, I'll
Can I,
jump
can I weigh in? on
Oh,
that,
yeah,
Kelly?
no.
Because I was going to bring it up, I think one of the other things that, is a skill that's, not readily evident in business generally today, is the ability to disagree and debate. And, I think a Guy and Abe mentioned this in different settings, leadership styles. One of the values that we had at State Street was the willingness to debate and challenge. We wanted to encourage the organization to develop that muscle. So, as a leader, the worst leaders are those that dictate the terms and you just follow the direction. The best leaders, as was mentioned, get out the best of people by encouraging contradictory opinions. I think that's, and I don't know what Thayer is like these days, whether that that skill or that capability exists, but it's one of the things that I think is undervalued and terribly important. The ability to bring up not contradictory, but different views on something and do it in a way that doesn't incite a bad reaction, but yet, and it has to be delivered in the right way and received in the right way, because as Abe and Guy mentioned, the best decisions are made when people mix it up and have a good debate, a good fight, but can walk away and everybody's friends. We've all contributed in a way that makes the whole better.
Rachelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, very early on in my career, I had a boss that sat across from me as I was agreeing with him, and he said, "This is really great you agree with me, but if we both agree on everything, one of us doesn't need to be here." Like, okay, well, that was he didn't know what he opened the door to, but yeah. But it gave me such a different perspective, and I think that's good to keep in mind. But also, as you become leaders, just also know you have to create the space, because I didn't know until he said it. And, after that is an expectation, but it is really necessary. And the more you're making high stakes decisions, you really want to have the debate, because you'll realize you have certain tendencies and preferences and experiences that'll give you a narrow point of view, and you will not make the best decisions without that debate.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, having that conversation internally is the only way to get to robust decision-making, where you have to make sure whatever you're proposing is going to work in lots of places. If you're in a complex system or it's high-risk products and services, you really need to stress test everything inside. So it's necessary, it's vital. And if you tell people to expect it and that it's necessary and vital, then it won't be a surprise. And the key is task conflict versus relational conflict. There's task conflict, let's keep it on task. Let's make this as robust as possible.
I just add that when you disagree, it's fine. Have some facts and logic in your next sentence, because they should be asking you why, and you need to be ready.
Excellent. Other questions? Don't be shy. Parents can ask questions too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a quick question. One common thing that you all mentioned is that people are really important. And so I was wondering if you could all touch on something that you look for somebody when you're trying to find somebody that you're working with, or maybe something that you see that makes you not want to work with somebody, or what's the deciding factor for you all?
Ethics.
Yeah, I would say ethics. Yeah.
Integrity.
We have a rule at our company. This is going to sound pretty blunt, but no jerks.
Yeah.
We have a different word that we use, and I'm not going to say it right now, but we say that, you have to ultimately have the right kind of internal compass, right? In terms of how you operate, what your motivations are. We really believe every time we come into work every day, we're trying to make new medicines to help patients. And you're not there for yourself. You're there for something greater than you. So I think that that's kind of a real driving factor.
I would say.
I'm not sure I completely heard the question, but was it around, what do you look for in a boss, or what would you steer away from? I mean, the other thing I would say to you is, you're not gonna love every boss you have in life. So you gotta find a way to navigate the good and the bad. And, that's about people skills, understanding what excites people and what turns them off. And so I just think, that's kind of human nature. There's probably, probably don't love all your teachers at Thayer, but you found a way to, navigate and find the best in them. So I do think, personal navigation through different circumstances is a learned skill, and the more you do it, the more comfortable and confident you'll get at achieving it.
Just to build on that, one of the two things I love, work ethic and persistence. The person who is willing to continue to work, improve, try again. I find those people tend to be they rise quickly in the organization because they're willing to put the effort in, to learn, to try new things, to innovate, fail, do it again, and get better and better.
The one thing I think is important to listen, what Abe's been sharing with us, his company clearly has a distinct culture. And so that doesn't mean it's the best company, and it may not be the best company for you. And so most places where you get a job, I'm sure your company's great. Don't worry. I want to come work there. It sounds awesome. Now I'm like, we don't have enough rules around the kind of us. If I jerk them tomorrow, I'm not sure, how it would go.
Might be good food and all that.
So the point is, a lot of jobs you're going to go into it, and that first 90 days is meant to be a probationary period. And that means I, as the employer, as the boss, am checking you out. But you have to remember too, you're kind of deciding if you're the right fit too. So I want to encourage, if you get somewhere and it just doesn't seem right, maybe they're all jerks, or maybe it's unethical, or maybe you just don't fit. It wasn't what you thought. Just turn around. There's a big school of thought to stick it out. There's also a school of thought to just say this is, and I'm not saying this about college. Freshman year of college is tough. Take your time. Get through the first semester. Don't make any rash decisions until you survive the first semester. But a workplace, sometimes there's just alarming signs when you get somewhere. It's just not going to be for you. Maybe nobody comes in and you wanted an in-person. Maybe they're unethical and something's wrong. Whatever it is, if there's huge warning signs, just get out in the 90 days, because you don't even have to put on your resume. Just start again, get it. I know financially that may be too simplistic. I don't want to simplify getting a paycheck, but it's the same thing that bosses are going to go through. They may just see and say, this was I made a bad choice. I thought, as Jay said, I spent 5 hours with you. I thought, and then for junior people, you spend an hour with someone and it's just not a good fit. So don't forget, sometimes you do make a mistake and it's just not the right fit for you. And if your warning signs are going off, just find another job. It just may not be the right place for you. And the answer is, you don't have to put, in my opinion, you don't have to put that on your resume. If you make a mistake, it's okay if there's a small gap. It's not the end of the world. But college, take your time. First semester of college is hard. Give yourself a chance to adjust. It's a huge adjustment. It's not there, for heaven's sake. So give yourself time to adjust to that. Am I right on that one, parents? Mm-hmm. We've all gotten the texts and the calls. Other questions? Go ahead.
You guys talked about the personal things that you need to set aside to be good leaders and to be successful decision makers. I'm just wondering, the role that emotions play in your day-to-day lives and at your businesses and as leaders in these high level jobs that you have, and how that plays into what you do.
Great question. Such a good question. Such a good question.
Who wants to tackle it first?
I would say that there's always emotion in your work, because ultimately you're passionate about it. And things, as we've all said, things don't always go right. You're challenged all the time. I think one of the things that I try to do is, this might sound a little, I don't know, there's a meditation practice of quieting your mind, in really complex, stressful business situations. You do have to find a way to quiet your mind and really being able to distill what are real core issues, because what you'll ultimately have and what you'll be faced with is you'll be faced with a lot of different voices. You're going to have a lot of voices in your ear. Some of those voices are going to make you feel different ways. And ultimately what you have to do is be able to like quiet all of that and be able to really hone in and focus on what are the core issues. And I think that's kind of a learned practice in my opinion. But your ability to do that and have kind of that singular focus, I think is really important.
Rachelle, you described that. You said you took 30 minutes, right? And I know, I'm sure,
In a box.
it's not always 30 minutes. As on a submarine, you wouldn't have 30 minutes to meditate. We know that. But when you do, Rachelle, what do you do?
Well, I think it's when you're a leader, you just kind of have to set those things aside, but let's be realistic. You come back to them. I mean, that's for real. They don't go away. And so I think in your leadership role, people are looking to you and they're going to have maybe a lot of the same emotions when certain things, especially when something goes sideways. And so they're looking to you to try to figure out how to navigate it, and you need to help to show the way. Personally, if I take those home, I better figure out a way to work through them, whatever that is. For me, I like to, if I work out really hard, I don't think about anything. And then, it kind of helps me work through different thoughts and so on. And everybody has their way of kind of staying emotionally healthy, because you do need that to come back and go at it again the next day. But I do think, taking care of your own health is really important. And also, don't deny the emotions. They are real. I mean, I was for years the only woman on all kinds of teams, and it would be like, oh, I can't be the emotional woman. And the reality is, it's fine. There are a bunch of emotional men too. Go figure. And so it's okay. Just don't let it get in the way of the work, especially when others are looking to you.
The thoughts, Mike?
First of all, I'm so glad my wife's not here hearing me talk about emotions. But, it's easy to talk to people at work when everything's fine. Very difficult. It's more difficult to talk to people when things are not fine. And so on the emotion phase, if you have to be open enough and calm enough when people give you the not so good news, that they will tell you. Because if you snap back at them when they do, you'll never hear bad news again until disaster strikes. And most of us here, we only make our living really solving problems. And if no one tells you about the problems, you're useless.
Guy, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to accept emotion as part of it and learn how to process it. Especially when you're hearing bad news. I mean, I tend to say to folks a lot of time, thank you for sharing that difficult thing, because most of the time it's very scary for them and the role we're in sometime for them to share bad news. So, to me, I'm always like, thank you for caring enough to be brave enough to bring this forward, because you can't solve it if you're not aware of it. And it's tough. There's a lot of different voices coming at you at different times. My company's called Peloton for a reason. So when I get a lot of that happening, I tend to just go cycle for a while. And it's amazing how I find that my brain processes things in the background, and it brings a certain level of clarity to it. I also try not to rush a decision. I find that when folks are coming at you saying, well, we got to make a decision here, I'm like, what's the timing of why do I need to go fast? Right. So think about sometimes that for yourself. Why do I need to go fast right now? What I care about is being right, or making the best possible decision, right, aligned to the purpose of our organization and the people and the team related to it. So sometimes you got to allow yourself to go, slow and really take the different data points in and think about you got to make a decision at some point, but then make a decision. But it's tricky. Emotions are tricky.
Any final thoughts? Jay, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
The question was that, if you give me a little snippet, I'll give you a reaction.
I have a final thought.
Yep.
maybe. Sometimes I talk to a lot of young people and they don't know what they want to do, which is normal. But what bothers me is that not knowing holds them back. So if you don't know what you want to do, that is all the more reason to go on a journey of discovery and try many, many new things and have many, many new experiences. And look for schools that give you the most experiences and the most widest variety of experiences. Because you cannot learn what lights you up inside from your phone in your bedroom. You can only learn by doing and by experiencing and trying as many things as possible as quickly as you can, so you can deepen the journey where that light will take you.
Can I just say one thing? I love that. But to my son that's back there, everyone else, but do it in 4 years. The journey. 4 years. 4 years. Not 6, not 8. 4.
Ride all the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll let that be the last word. I'm sure your son will love that. I really learned so much from all of you tonight. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your candor. And your willingness to be open to these young people and to just also inspire them. I think what you said really, I think, inspires them to think about a lot of things, I hope, and good luck in the course. So thanks for all of your great questions, and it's great always to be back here at Thayer. So
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay. First of all, I'm just struck by how I wish we had not just 90 minutes, but 3 hours and maybe a whole semester to learn from all of you up here. And also struck by the generosity and humility and the thoughtfulness and the candor all of you have expressed. And I'm finally struck by how amazing it is that 40 of our students will have 12 weeks to learn from some of you again, and so many others who will be part of this program. So I am so thankful, grateful for your thoughtfulness, for your wisdom tonight. And because it is an important part of my job, a reminder, today is Founders Day. And programs like this with these incredible human beings who help to teach and inspire our students happen because of things like Founders Day and the annual fund that supports these programs and financial aid and supporting our teachers and our arts programs, our athletic programs. So for those of you who have not had an opportunity just yet to support Founders Day, we invite you to do so before the end of the evening. And once again, thank you so much, Kelley and our panelists, for an incredible night. Thank you all.
That's great.